Greetings everyone. I just about to finish a playthrough in which I'm playing as Inca, and the main reason I did this was because I previously wasn't playing any big games with native South American nations, as well as I wanted to get the Sun God achievement, which I did. So as you can see, uh, I'm about to finish the game, and I just wanted to show you how far I got in my playthrough. So as you can see, I own all the South America and almost all the North America, from Alaska to eastern parts, just a small portions of left over here. Uh, so and also a bit of Scotland and Portugal over here. So I just recently finished the war, so I'm still coring lots of provinces, and I'll still have quite a few uncored ones. Uh, so my total development is 4.6 thousand, uh, and in general I feel that I got somewhat lucky in this game, because the enemies weren't that strong. So so what were the main uh, enemies? For example, Spain was never formed. I only fought Castile in Americas, and Aragon was always an independent state, and in the end actually Castile was under Aragon. So that was a huge plus. There weren't those huge Spanish armies and fleets and colonies I had to fight against. Also, uh, there were a lot of Portuguese colonies, uh, which are usually, in my opinion, easier to conquer. There were absolutely no French uh, colonies at all, none. So that was a huge bonus as well, because when French are always harder to fight because of their strong armies. Scotland was uh, colonizing quite a bit in this game, uh, as well as uh, the England and the Dutch. And also another bonus was that the Scotland back home was still there, and Great Britain was uh, formed only like 25 years ago, just before the end of the game. So that was just also a huge bonus, that they never got too powerful. Also, Canada broke off from the British at some uh, or more, I would say, actually from the Norwegians, which also colonized, and also there were no other nations here. So I was quite lucky in those wars. Uh, so I started initially as Cusco here. So my main strategy was to overtake the rest of the nations over in this region, but I didn't take any technologies. I took only like one military technology, and I spent every monarch point on development. So when I was finally westernizing, I had lots of development, and I immediately was a great power of like third or fourth place, and I had a lot of income and to support and manpower as well as force limits to support big armies. So that was a big bonus. Uh, so I the first I was getting the westernization from the British, who were in this area as well as bit of over here. Uh, so that was my first war. After westernization, I took the British lands. Afterwards, I focused on Castile, which had uh, some parts of Brazil, and later quite a bit of it. Also, Argentine was for the British, which I took later, and as well as there was Portuguese La Plata as well. And afterwards, uh, it I had to fight Portuguese in Mexico over here, as well as they had a lot of land in the Mexico territory here as well, and they owned almost all the Caribbean region except these two provinces which were colonized by Scotland. So I took all of them as well. Uh, I think I took almost all the Caribbean in one war. So those wars were quite easy since there weren't that many strong opponents and strong allies which I couldn't piece out over time. So as well as they didn't had too much uh, development back home, so I was able to get very high war scores with them, with just owning the colonial regions. Uh, so, and especially when I got the imperialism CB, it's a lot easier. So you just attack the colonial nation, take their capital, and you are guaranteed 25 war score with that. So afterwards, also there were English Louisiana, as well as Newfoundland, and also the Dutch with Nova Hollandia in here. So I took those territories in two wars. I also were fighting Canada at the same time because they were allies to them. But in quite a few of these wars, Scotland was my ally, and they helped quite a bit. But in the end, when I took quite a bit of land from my enemies, I decided to attack Scotland as well, and they had territories around here somewhere, just so that they had ended to be useful for me. So I didn't get whole North America, but it seems like just a matter of time, because it's basically two separate wars. One with Scotland I had to finish, and one with Canada and Newfoundland. Oh, and of course Norway is not allied to them, so but that's just small, and same as for Portugal. So I another 10-20 years and I would easily be owning all the North America. Um, so what else to show? So let's start with the armies. As you can see, I have the biggest army in the world, and no one is even close to my amounts. The European nations are quite big. Ottomans have lost quite a bit. I don't have a map, but my guess is that they lost quite a bit of power since they were some time ago a revolutionary nation, and they don't seem to be anymore. So, and they also quite fighting at the moment with the Polish, and the Polish is probably allied to somebody powerful. And also I was able to destroy most of the colonies, so they don't have colonial armies as well. I also even got some territory in Australia and in the region, from which I took from Portuguese in some of the wars, uh, just because I had excess war score. So I used quite a bit of promotion of cultures, which is very useful if you're playing in the Americas, because you just after you core and make them the new provinces your territories, you can promote the cultures, and it's very useful with cultures like Castilian, Portuguese, English, maybe Dutch. So you you don't have to change the culture of your conquered provinces, and it lowers unrest and increases your income. So it's very beneficial to actually uh, take these cultures on board. So because those colonial nations will take a lot of land, which you'll be eventually taking back. So it's very beneficial. Uh, I got quite a bit of income in my game. So as I said, I was developing a lot in the early game, and as you can see, for example, my my capital has 38 development, and you can see these other uh, provinces have quite high development as well, because as I said, I was spending most of my monarch points on just developing the provinces. Even with the primitive plus 50 penalty bonus, it still seems quite beneficial to develop and not to take technologies which will you eventually get for free on when you reform your religion. And yeah, about religion, I stayed with the native religion, which seems to be uh, a lot better than converting to Christianity, because of all the bonuses which you have, which stay after the reforms as well. So I didn't took the national decision to convert to Christianity. And regarding religion, I in the end I'm with very low religious unity. So I guess I should have taken religious ideas, uh, or maybe taken the ideas that increase my religious unity and lowers unrest. But uh, at the first I thought that I won't be needing them, since I already have some bonuses uh, that lowers unrest. But I wasn't expecting in the early and mid game that I will be taking this much land in the North America. So I mean, the North America is mostly like last hundred years or something, this territory. So it was just I was just steamrolling through there. So what else? Technologies. I wasn't able to get the admin tech to finish, but I did these two. Ideas. Of course, I took exploration first to expand faster. Also took quantity at the same time. And these three first are all after I reformed my religion at the same time. Also mostly because of the uh, manpower modifier plus 50%, and I think I took offensive ideas just at the same time because I had to take like one technology level or something just to get it, and then I mostly focused on ideas. Later I decided to take trade, uh, just because you have many many trade regions, and eventually when you take Caribbean, you can uh, get very good trade income as well if you move your trade center to this area. Uh, Afterwards, I also thought I should take more military ideas. I took defensive, most which in my opinion is always a good idea. And then at that point I was quite late in the game, and I couldn't think of anything to choose actually, because there wasn't really any needs. Uh, so I just took quality ideas to increase my military potential and make the battles and fights easier. But even though at such high uh, force limits and big armies, that wasn't really an issue fighting the enemy. So uh, probably not something worth taking in this late. So just switching forward to the end screen, you can see the overview, and just besides Navy, I had the largest and the most powerful nation in basically everything. And just for a few fun facts, uh, this is a new feature, it seems, and as you can see, I'm quite effective in combat, since 130,000 enemy died each year, um, and I only lost 37,000 each year, so that's very effective. Also quite a few ships, although I don't remember fighting that many sea battles. Annexed a lot of provinces, wiped out a lot of nations, and I didn't lose even a single province in my game, so that's great. Lots of disasters, and my capital had a lot of development. So, and overall I had 13,000 score, which isn't the first one, it seems I'm the third. And in the end, my timeline of my playthrough. So the start will be slower, but I'll be taking some of these nations. I also vassalized this one in the process, but otherwise it's going to be quite slow, because the westernization for me was very late. So I also noticed that, and at this point I formed the Inca Empire. I noticed that colonization for primitive nations is very weak and very slow. So So in the end, it seems much better to just spend your monarch points on development. So you are ready when you finally westernize. You are really ready. You have lots of income, lots of manpower, lots of force limits, and you can easily create big armies to stand against the Europeans. And as you can see, England and Castile are both starting to advance in South America, and I'm still going slowly towards here, and I'll be annexing them later, but it was quite hard because they had higher military technology level, but I was able to get these eventually. I did vassalize one or two of them as well, and eventually when I took these provinces, uh, I I was next to the English, from which I was able to do the reform. And as well, it's important to remember that you should uh, pay a close attention to how many institutions they have embraced, because you might do it too soon, and in that case you might lose out, because they might embrace a new institution in like 5-10 years. So maybe you should wait 5-10 years if you can, uh, to get that institution as well, because if you embrace too soon, uh, you reform the religion too soon, you will be in a disadvantage, because spreading that new institution will be hard and slow. So you'll be putting yourself at a disadvantage up front. So I'm next to them, and I'll be soon be attacking them and taking most of English provinces here. I just wasn't able to take Trinidad, but I took everything else, and this area is for the Portuguese. So I took some lands from the Castilians as well. Unfortunately, the timeline doesn't show these nation names very well. So you can see I just took a big part from the Brazilian state as well, and I took over Argentina as well, and there are just remaining some uncolonized provinces there. There's still a lot of Brazil left, but I'll be taking eventually this in one big war. And afterwards, all the the four small nations that are left, I'll be taking as well in a single war. And after I'll be taking Brazil, now I took everything, and also the small nations, and these are just some provinces uncolonized left. So now I also took Portuguese territories over here. I'm sorry, these are still the native territories. Portuguese is over here. And as you can see, I took Portuguese here, and most of the Caribbean region. And now I'm pretty much, I'm still colonizing over here the last provinces, and now I'm open to new to North America, and also did take from the Portuguese and from the English here quite a bit. But most of the North America is already colonized. So okay, now here I fought the English and the California, then took almost all of the runs, just a few provinces left. Afterwards it's Portuguese from there and there, and the next is Holland, and all the way to the east coast in Canada, and this is Scotland, this and this, and I'll be taking but before that I'll be attacking the Dutch and the Newfoundland, and afterwards the Scottish as well. So yeah, and just a few provinces remaining. So that was my playthrough. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So as you can see, Great Britain was finally formed because Scotland lost. Castile is a very small nation with barely anything left. Portugal eventually also lost to Morocco. Aragon was a powerful nation. They still have southern Italy, but they also seem to be losing quite a bit to France. France expanded a lot, but they never went and never made any colonies. Maybe just besides something very small I cannot see at the moment, but in other games they quite often go and colonize quite big regions. So I was surprised they didn't make a single colony. The Dutch are as quite as usual. They also made colonies. It seems Poland and Lithuania never joined. Austria annexed or integrated Hungary. Ottomans never made it too far. Russia seemed to be getting quite a bit from them. And yeah, the Morocco is a big surprise for me. I have never seen them this big, and especially in these Spanish regions. So also Prussia never formed. Scandinavia never formed. So overall, this seems to be a relatively weak game from the AI, because many nations never formed or formed very late. So that definitely was a huge plus on why I was able to get my empire this big in the Americas. Because otherwise, if there was, like, for example, a very strong Spanish player with many colonies, as I had in my recent Cherokee playthrough, the Spanish had most of Spain and half of France, as well as most of Italy, and they had most of the colonies as well, just besides Brazil, which was in control of France. They and so in those wars, getting much provinces in the war was hard, just because you couldn't get too much war score because of their home development. So overall, this was a very good game. It seems that playing as the North Americans is actually South Americans is relatively easy. I wouldn't say it's too hard. Also, it may seem a little boring, because the initial start is more interesting. You have to conquer the provinces, but afterwards, when you get big enough, you're just slowly, very slowly colonizing up to this region, and you have to wait for be able to reform your religion. And with South Americans, it seems to be a very slow process, and afterwards you get some interesting and challenging wars with the colonies, but once you get strong enough, and if the alliances and colonies aren't that strong, it's more or less just a walk in the park. You saw that I was able to took North America, just huge amounts. I remember in some wars I was getting uh, what I was getting aggressive expansion, like minus 200, minus, and even in the end with the Scotland, I took, I think, around minus 400 aggressive expansion penalty. So it's just enormous, and you'll never get any uh, coalitions against you in the since you are playing in the Americas and not Europe. So in Europe it would be a lot harder to actually do something like that. As well as also it helps that uh, you don't get any overextension for provinces which are the overseas colonies. So that helps even more. So you can take a lot of provinces even before imperialism, CB. You can take many provinces. So yeah, I hope this was interesting, and I would definitely recommend everyone to at least once play as both South American, North American, and as well as Central American nations. It can be challenging, it can be interesting. It's also fun to see uh, any of the primitive nations becoming dominant world powers. So thank you.